I had been right. I was still right. I was always right. I had lived my life one way and I could just as well have lived it another. I had done this and I hadn't done that. I hadn't done this thing, but I had done another. The literal meaning of life is whatever you're doing that prevents you from killing yourself. But I reminded myself, it's common knowledge that life isn't worth living anyhow. Life can be magnificent and overwhelming. That is the whole tragedy. Without beauty, love, or danger, it would almost be easy to live. Judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy. All the rest, whether or not the world has 3 dimensions, whether the mind has 9 or 12 categories, comes afterwards. I was assailed by memories of a life that wasn't mine anymore, but one in which I'd found the simplest and most lasting joys. The smells of summer, the part of town I loved, a certain evening sky, Marie's dresses, and the way she laughed. All men have a sweetness in their life. That is what helps them go on. It is towards that they turn when they feel too worn out. I would rather not have upset him, but I couldn't see any reason to change my life. It was previously a question of finding out whether or not life had to have a meaning to be lived. It now becomes clear, on the contrary, that it will be lived all the better if it has no meaning. Thus, I draw from the absurd 3 consequences, which are my revolt, my freedom, and my passion. By the mere activity of consciousness, I transform into a rule of life what was an invitation to death, and I refuse suicide. On good days, if you trust life, life has to answer you. In order to understand the world, one has to turn away from it on occasion. At the heart of all beauty lies something inhuman. When the soul suffers too much, it develops a taste for misfortune. People hasten to judge in order not to be judged themselves. Since we're all going to die, it's obvious that when and how don't matter. Every act of rebellion expresses a nostalgia for innocence and an appeal to the essence of being. It is the job of thinking people not to be on the side of the executioners. What is called a reason for living is also an excellent reason for dying. I rebel, therefore I exist. What is a rebel? A man who says no. Freedom is nothing but a chance to be better. The most important thing you do every day you live is deciding not to kill yourself. Have you no hope at all? And do you really live with the thought that when you die and nothing remains? You can't create experience, you undergo it. There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Man stands face to face with the irrational. He feels within him his longing for happiness and for reason. The absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. I feel like getting married, or committing suicide, or subscribing to illustration something desperate, you know. There are crimes of passion and crimes of logic. The boundary between them is not clearly defined. After a while, you could get used to anything. I explained to him, however, that my nature was such that my physical needs often got in the way of my feelings. There are more things to admire in men than to despise. Everything I know about morality and the obligations of man, I owe it to football. All I can say is that on this earth, there are pestilences and there are victims, and as far as possible, one must refuse to be on the side of the pestilence. A single sentence will suffice for modern man. He fornicated and read the papers. After that vigorous definition, the subject will be, if I may say so, exhausted. If something is going to happen to me, I want to be there. There have been as many plagues as wars in history, yet always plagues and wars take people equally by surprise. The slave begins by demanding justice, and ends by wanting to wear a crown. One plays at being immortal, and after a few weeks, one doesn't even know whether or not one can hang on till the next day. To stay or to go, it amounted to the same thing. Start by looking for what is valid in every man. We need the sweet pain of anticipation to tell us we are really alive. Liberty is the right not to lie. The welfare of humanity is always the alibi of tyrants. We don't have the time to completely be ourselves. We only have the room to be happy. Here lives a free man. Nobody serves him. I said that the world is absurd, but I was too hasty. This world in itself is not reasonable. That is all that can be said. But what is absurd is the confrontation of this irrational and the wild longing for clarity, whose call echoes in the human heart. They'd hurt each other without wanting to, just because each represented to the others the cruel and demanding necessity of their lives. There's always a certain hour of the day and of the night when a man's courage is at its lowest ebb, and it was that hour only that he feared. Alas, after a certain age, every man is responsible for his face. We used to wonder where war lived, what it was that made it so vile. And now we realize that we know where it lives, inside ourselves.